Hey guys, welcome back to the garage. In this video I'm finishing up the Jenny fan install. If this is your first time visiting the channel, be sure to check out the playlist to this series. It's about 4 videos and I'll put a link in the description below. Also be sure to subscribe and hit that little bell notification. That way you'll be notified each time we release a video. I hope you enjoy this one. Okay YouTube, this one's fighting me a little bit on this shroud, but where I use the plastic washer to keep from marring the powder coat and the washer and lock washer, I had to make a little bit of a relief cut in the shield here because the bolt was kind of sticking out and it wasn't letting it go flush. And this one's real tight. It's the way that I framed it in. I didn't have any trouble with the larger fan, but for some reason this one pretty tight. It's even when you dry fit it out on the bench, it's real tight. I marred the coating a little bit down there on the bottom, but it's gonna be okay. Now let's see if we can get this side in. I had my doubts. Okay guys, still working at this. Next step I'm going to be working on is getting the filter bank ready for the filters. And what I use here is just some old scrap 12-2 wire that I've stripped from some Romex. And you can see here I've already put them on the top fan. Now I already had these made up for it. I just took them off so I could take all this down and paint it. And I've got them basically on the back side and the front, and that way when I cut my filters they'll just slide right up in between here. And with the force of the fan, it won't blow them right up against the guard there. And I'm going to be working on putting them around this one here on the bottom. I've got my wire guards on the filter bank there, and so now I'm ready to put the filters on. I actually started here with one row. These are actually paint booth exhaust filters. They're roughly 20 inches by 21 inches. And what I do is I just cut them to fit. I ordered a case of them, and a case will last somebody like me a long time. You change them out probably 2 to 3 times a year at the most. Just depends on how much you paint. And I use a stick. I'll get my measurement, hold it down, and just cut it with an X-Acto knife. Okay, YouTube, there is 2 freshly lined filter banks. Turned out looking pretty decent. Now you can get a good idea how those wires are being used, just to kind of hold the filters in place. This bottom one turned out exactly like the upper one. And you just have to do the best you can when cutting around this motor. I just try to get it as close as I can. And once you have one done, you can use it as a template for cutting the next one. But overall, I really like the way it turned out. These filters seem to last a long time. The only thing that I find that really loads them up quick is clear coat. So about every clear session, if you spray, like when I was spraying the cover and I was putting 2 or 3 coats of clear on, then you know, it would load them up pretty quick, and so you change them out pretty frequent if you're doing that. But for the most part, for epoxy or primer, they'll get whatever color you're spraying, but they won't actually be all the way through, just mainly on the outside. But then once I find that they really load up, you can come over here and just barely touch them, and the particles will just load the floor up. Okay, YouTube, I'm trying to finish up this Jenny fan, and before we go any further, I just want to throw a disclaimer out there, and that is that anything you see me do on this channel is primarily meant for entertainment purposes only. Anytime you're trying to do a project, you guys know as well as I do, you should always consult a professional. So with that being said, let's take a look here at the Jenny fan. So we had done a test run with this fan after I had restored it, and now I'm wanting to do a test run on it again since it's mounted before I actually wire everything up permanently. And at first I thought that I would just wire it with a single pole switch and it would just be either on or off. But it does have the variable speed motor. So I thought, well, I do happen to have the controller, so we can go ahead and wire the variable speed and see how it does. These motors can be wired for 110 volts. And this is the variable speed switch. I have verified that this motor configuration is correct. And then this is the 220 volt wiring with the variable speed switch. So when I wired this top fan, I originally set it at 110 volts using this particular controller, and it did okay, but I felt like this controller got a little warm, the faceplate of it. I can't remember how hot it actually got. Everything was in spec, it was just warm to the touch. So I switched everything on that upper fan to the 220 volts, and I bought the 220 volt controller, and it ran a lot cooler. Nice amperage, and the faceplate of the controller was a lot cooler. So that left me with this single pole controller. So I thought we'd just try it on this fan since it is a smaller fan. And I've got everything wired up here. I don't have any choice on this particular fan but to run it at the 110 because everything's pretty much wired in the garage. I've already mounted a box right there. I'm going to come off of this one receptacle here. This whole wall, there's 5 receptacles on it. It's a 20 amp circuit dedicated to this wall, and at most I have a vacuum cleaner plugged into it, and that's pretty much about it. This is rated at 6 amps, so it should be fine. It should be well below the 80% of what we're wanting to run at for 20 amps. And so what I've done, I've just got a service cord. I've wired a connector on it, and I've just got it temporary for right now, and I thought we'd give it a go. I am going to take out one of these fiberglass filters so we can see what's going on in there. Right now the faceplate of the controller is right at 77 degrees, 78 degrees. We'll put an amp meter on it. We'll go on the 15 amp scale, which should be the bottom of the second row there. You can see the 15 amps. Alright guys, here we go. I'm going to fire it up first and just let it come up to speed and shut it back down. Make sure fan blades aren't hitting anything and stuff like that. Well guys, I'm happy with it. Ran it for probably 10-15 minutes, maybe a little longer, and everything seems to be doing okay. I did have a rattle on that fan shroud, and it was right here where it was in contact with the bolt of the motor. Just cut a small rectangular piece of inner tube right there. This motor is running just a little bit warmer than this one up here, and I got a feeling that is because I'll just break it. I got a feeling that's because This one's wired for the 110, and that one's wired for the 220. It'd be interesting to see. I know I tested current on that one when I installed it, but it's been so long now I couldn't tell you. It's probably running less amperage, so therefore it's going to be cooler. This one though, never really saw it get real warm. Right there's 103 degrees. I mean, you can still put your hand on it, and this controller was about the same. I seen it go up to, a couple times I seen it go up to 93, 94, and I got a feeling that that's a heat sink for some of the electronics in there, and that's why that's getting warm. But it wasn't to the point that it was going to burn you. You've seen our amperage. We're running around 3 amps running current, and then when I first fired it up, it looked like, I have to go back and look at the video and kind of pause it and see what it actually was, because it's so quick. But to me it looked like around 13 or 14 amps, and that was just a moment, and then it come online and come on down to the running current. The starting current's going to always be higher. Okay guys, we got the fan all wired up, and I decided to go just a little bit different direction than what we'd previously talked about. I went ahead and just decided to forget the whole variable speed thing. The main reason being that this is the main fan and it is variable speed, and this one's just going to be pretty much running wide open. I decided I wanted to put a cover over the switch, and this will work really well for the location that it is in. Just a regular single pole 20 amp switch. Now I measured the current with the 20 amp switch, and the current was like 3.5 amps. So it's just a little bit different there, not much. The switch actually stayed ambient temperature. I think it was 80 degrees in the garage, and that's exactly what the switch stayed. Also, the top of the motor, I ran it for, like I mentioned, I ran it for a while, and the top of the motor actually seemed cooler to me. I mean, it was slightly warm, but not near as warm as it was with the variable speed switch. That, I don't know why, but I just decided to go this route. I think one of my favorite parts about the way this fan turned out is basically the hardware. This here is painted to match the fan, but these threads and these nuts are zinc phosphated. Same thing with these bolts and lock washers. Those are zinc phosphated. And if you're interested in this process, I have a video on it on my channel. I'll put a link in the description below. I think it's titled Restoring Fasteners for Your Restoration. But it's worth the watch. This here is pretty much what happens when you paint bolts. You can see here the paint's just going to flake off. It's not really important on something like this, but on a restoration it is. Well guys, there it is. Took me way longer to do this than what I had anticipated, but I really like the way it turned out, and I'm hoping it's going to help me out here in the garage. Just want to say thanks to all my subscribers and everybody following the channel, and when I have a little bit more progress, I'll be back online.